Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting lesson. This one is going to be about the interface builder basics. This is Unit 1, lesson 8. It's one of the greatest lessons that I like to teach because it talks about the power of Storyboard in designing your apps, and it helps the student to develop at least the interface of their app quite easily and test it and prototype it before even writing any piece of code. So what we're going to learn in this lesson, we're going to learn the user interface, how to preview and the user interface and how to compile it. We're going to talk about the storyboard. We're going to talk about the different sections of your storyboard. We're going to talk about the view controller. We're going to talk about the document layout. We're going to talk about adding objects to your screens. We're going to show you how we tie those objects with your code. There are two types of connections we have. One of them is called outlet, and the other one is called actions. Outlet is to get properties and change values on the screens. The actions is to actually program buttons, pressing, gestures, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you how we do that. We're going to play around with the coding a little bit, how to change the colors and so forth of the button. But we're going to give you the basics on how to design your screen, how to change something on the screen, how to add action to your screen. And then at the end, we'll talk about some of the major properties that you're going to see in the user interface. All right. So that is it. Let's get started. Okay, so this was the one that we've been working with in the previous video. We're going to start with a new one. So I'm going to click on File, New Project. It's a Mac OS project. It's iOS project. It's an app. And then we're going to click on Next. And it's going to be Interface Builder Basics. Okay. And okay, so it is the theme is none, since we're not going to run it on the device, but you can select one since we added themes earlier. Now you're going to use the storyboard. So I'm going to use a storyboard. We're going to use the app delegate. We're going to use the Swift language. We're going to click on next. And where do you want to store it? And then we click on create. And now we got an empty project. I'm going to close this one so we don't get confused. And I am going to change the simulator to iPhone 11. And let's talk about this object called storyboard. So in the storyboard, there is something called MainStoryboard. This MainStoryboard is an object, whatever we call it, an object, a class, an XML, whatever. But think about it as just an object that allow you to have multiple screens in your application, and it allows you to set the different navigations if you want. It allows you to add things to it. We're going to add buttons, images, all kind of stuff to these screens. So that is the MainStoryboard. In the past, it used to be XIB file. They call it NIP file sometimes. So you can create interfaces either with the MainStoryboard or single nib file. Okay, the MainStoryboard, the nice thing about it is that you can see all screens together, and it shows you the navigation from one screen to another screen. There's another screen here. It's called Launch Storyboard. This Launch Storyboard is basically an kind of like a splash screen. You can change the background color. You can put the company logo, the app logo. You can put a short message, your mission statement, whatever you want on this launch screen. So I'm going to do, just to show you quickly, we're going to change the background to something different. I'm gray, I'm bad with colors, so I'm going to use neutral colors. So I change it to gray, and then I'm going to add to it just a label. All right. What's a label? If you look at here, do you see this plus called library? This allow me to add objects to my screens. There are many objects here. There are labels, buttons, segmented control, text field. This launch screen mainly for output. We don't usually interact with this screen. So you can add images if you want. You can add buttons, labels if you want. That's about it. So I'm going to add a label here. Label is nothing but like an output screen, like an output um, that you wanted to display to the user. So you can change the value by clicking here, and you should be able to double click and change it. It says great, welcome to my great app, right? Welcome to my great app. Okay, I'm going to show you later on how we change the attribute of this label, but for now, all we have is this. You can change the font size in here if you want. You can change the color if you want. You can make it bigger so it will fit. And you can move it around if you want to center it. If you can see when you move this, as I'm moving it, now it's centered vertically, horizontally. But now if you want to center it vertically, now you can see that it's centered in the screen, horizontally and vertically. You can change the color if you want, the label color to anything that you want. I don't think this is, oh my God, it's ugly. So let's use white. Okay, maybe, all right. So that is how we added this to the storyboard, to the launch storyboard. So what is the launch storyboard? A launch storyboard is nothing but like a splash screen. When you first run your application, it will appear for a second or so, and then it disappears. After it disappears, it takes you to whatever you specify is your main interface. How do you specify your main interface? If you go to the project properties, and then you will see here your main interface is main. This is my main. This is my main. So in the project property, I specify that my main storyboard is called main, which is this one here. All right, so we are set. So if we go to the main storyboard, let's examine what do we have. First, if you have what you have here, you have the document layout. Before we talk about the document layout, you'll see in here this arrow. This arrow, you can move it around if you have multiple screens. What is this? What is the purpose of this arrow? This is your starting point in your application. So after the launch screens disappears, you can actually say what screen do you want? And it comes to this main storyboard. If you have multiple screen, I can move this to the other screen or the screen or whatsoever. Common mistakes that the users make, the students make. If I delete this starting point, now if I run my application will crash. It says it will say I don't have a starting point. So if you don't have a starting point, it will have a runtime error and your application will crash. How do we fix that? If we click on this view controller, this is called a view controller. We will discuss it in more details later on. This view controller basically controls many views. And then if you look at here, you have the document layout. That view controller have a view. This is a view that basically the content view that all views lay on top of it. So a view controller, as the name suggests, it manages a view, and it has a main view that covers the entire screen. So if I select this guy, I can go to the property, and then by clicking on this, remember this is the identity inspector here, not the, sorry, this is the inspector panel here. If you select this property, you will see this guy here. It says, this is my initial view controller. So if I select this guy, now that arrow is back and the application is happy to start again. All right, so be careful with this guy. This is a common mistake that the students make, and they delete it by unknowingly, and then they'll come back to it, and they don't know how to do it, but this is how you do it. I showed you how to do it. Okay. Okay, so now let's add things to this screen, to this our first screen. So what I'm going to do, there is this library button here. So what this allows you to add, it allows you to add multiple things on the screen. And if you click on this, it'll show you what each one means. So a label can contain an arbitrary amount of text, but UI label may shrink, unwrap, truncate, depending on the text. Now, this we will cover later on as you become more expert in this. But other things like you have also a button. A button, you can use it for action. An image, you can have an image button and so forth. You can have a segmented control for multiple buttons. You can have text field. You can have sliders. You can have activity controllers. In all of these gray colored ones are things that you can put on the screen. Then you have other things at the bottom, the yellow one. Those are like screens, like view controllers, navigation controller, table view controllers. So those are controllers that you control other things, okay? But to start with, we're just going to add a label, and then you can search here. You can search for, if you know what you're looking for. So I found my label, and then I can just drag it and drop it in my screen. And what we're going to add also, we're going to add a button. Instead of that, we're going to delete this, and then we have a button, and I'll just show you what we're going to do with these label and that button. Yeah. So the label again is for output mainly, no input. There are properties. As you select these, this is the inspection panel or canvas. So if you look at, as I select different things, this part changes according to what you are working with. So far, we have a view, we have a view controller, we have a label, we have a button. So every time I click on any of those, the properties for those objects changes, okay? So you can modify them. In addition to that, if you look at the document outline, you can see this is the view controller, this is the parent, here is the view, here is the label, the safe area, this is where you can actually put things. You have the label, and then you have the button. All right, so you can select them either from here or from here. Let's take a look at the first guy here. I'm going to give it a title. So this is my view controller. I'm going to go in here and give it a title in case I have multiple screens, so I know which screen I'm looking at. So I'm going to call this as my main screen or screen 1. So now once I do that, notice what happened. This title gets changed. So this is a better way to organize your screen. All right. And then we're going to change the text for this. And then we're going to say, instead of that, this is my winning app. I hope so, right? And then you can change some of the common attributes, the fonts, for example, the color. If you don't like that color, if you want to use a different color, you can select a different color. You can check the text. The default is 17. You can click on this. You can make it bold if you want. You can increase the size. You can change the font if you want. So all of that you can change for that label All right, so now I changed changed the property for the label. You can say, do you want it to be centered within the label dimensions? You want it left adjusted, right, and or fully adjusted. So fully aligned. All right, so this is how we change the property. Same thing with the button. With the button also has a property. You can change the background color if you want. Every one of those is a view. All of these are a view. So even though it's a label, but the parent class is a view. Here it is also a button, but the parent class is a view. So what does that mean? You always have properties related to the objects above, and then at the bottom, you have the property for the view. So if I wanted to change the background color of that button to something different, I can select that. And if I want it to be similar to the text, I can select it, do it that way. And then I can change the font if I want, right? You can make it resizes if you want. All right, so this is one way to do that. You can resize it. Again, you can just play around with these. You're not going to hurt anything. You always can go back. Command Z will take you back. But there are many properties related to these things, and you're not going to learn it all in one settings. What we're going to do, you're going to learn it step by step. All right, so now what we're going to do, we're going to show you how we connect the view with the controller, the code. So that we use MVS, model view controller. So we're going to use, this is my view, we're going to connect it with the controller to interact with the things on the screen. All right. Okay, so let's get to the fun part. So now let's say I am done with the design. I want to write some code to interact with these screens, or in this case, only one screen. First, I like to create more space for me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide some of these panels. So I will hide this guy. I will hide this guy as well. So now I have only the storyboard. And if you want to hide this as well, you can hide this so your screen is, you maximize the working space that you have. Now, if I want to tie the code with the screen, there is something here called, do you see this here? These editor options. One of the, when you click on it, there is one thing called assistant. All right. And I'm stuck for some reason. Here it is, back. All right, the button is back. So if I click on the assistant, what is it showing you? What is it showing me? Let me put this back for a minute, and then I'll explain what is this that you're looking at. What is showing you here, it's showing you the class that is associated with this view controller. So the class, the program that is associated with this view controller is this one. How do I know that? I'll show you in a minute. But this is the Swift class. This is the Swift class that is tied to this one here. So how do we know which class is tied, which Swift class is associated with these screens? If you click on the view controller, and then you click on the identity inspector, you will see the custom class that is linked to that view controller. This is important. A lot of students make that mistake. They create the view controller in the storyboard, but they forget to tie them together. So when they click on the assistant, they don't see the code, and that causes them a lot more problems. So I'm going to hide this again, so give us more space. And let's take a look at what we can do. The first thing that you can do is that you can control and drag, or right-click and drag, and then point it to somewhere in the class. So when you see that insert option, that means you're in a safe area. If I go above, it doesn't give me that option. So if I go below, that it's okay. If I go here, it doesn't give me that option. But if I go here outside that function, it gives me that option. So what you need to do, I usually do this. I will put my outlet, we call those outlets, at the beginning of my class. So this is the class, this is the view controller class, this is the beginning of the view controller, this is the end of the view controller class. So I can put it anywhere in the class outside a function. So this is a function, the beginning and ending of a function. You cannot put it here, but I can put it here. Now this window appears, and then it'll tell you, do you want an action or do you want an outlet? For now, I'm going to make it an outlet. And then I'm going to say here, it's LBL message, for example, or greetings, right? And then this is important. I mean, you usually don't have to do anything. It does it all for you. It says what type of outlet this. This is a UI label. Why it's a UI label? Because this is a UI label. So it's creating the link between what you have on the screen and the link that you have and the one that you have in the program. So if I click on connect, then that's okay. We're going to change the background, the color of the button. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create also an outlet for the button. So if I do right click again for the button, and I'm going to call that my button. Here, you got to be careful. So for a button, you can do also not only an outlet, you can do also an action. An action meaning you can press it, you can press inside, outside, all kind of stuff. And we're gonna take a look at that later on. So it's an outlet again, and I'm gonna click on connect. So now you can see here that I have these circles here filled. That means when I point at it means, okay, this variable UI label, this is a variable called label message, is actually tied to something on the screen. And this is how, which one is it tied to? Same thing with this. Or what you can do, right click here, and it'll actually show you the connections between your screen and your class. Same thing here, it shows you your screen and your class. If you want to disconnect these, you just simply click on the X. I'm not going to do that now, we'll do it later on in another class. All right, so I'm done with these connections for now. I am going to close this guy. I'm going to open the view controller, and we're going to write some code here, simply just to change, to show you how we interact with these outlets. So I have two outlets. So the label, for example, I can set, this is, remember, this is the view did load method. This view did load method is the first method that get executed when a view controller is loaded. All right. So what are we going to do? We're going to say, I'm going to change the message. The text, instead of saying welcome to my winning app, says welcome, we're gonna have fun today. All right, and I'm going to show you, this is long message. I'm going to show you what kind of effect that you will have on your label. In addition to that, I'm going to have the button. And then the button, for example, what we're going to do, we're going to say, in this case, we're going to say, change the title color, for example. All right. So in here, I'm going to say my button dot set title color. And then it is dot red. Let's do green. Okay. That green. And then I'm going to say the state is normal. Normal is not checked, okay? So there are two ways, it's pressed or not pressed, so normal state. So now let's see what happens. Now, if I run my application, the first thing will happen, it'll come to this view did load. It will change the text from welcome to my winning app. We're gonna have fun today, and it will changes the color to normal, to green of the button. Okay, the title button of the button. So if you watch what happens here, and let's see, where is the simulator? Here it is, it showed up. So here is my simulator. See, this is my splash screen. Notice it disappeared. And now, instead of welcome to my winning app, now it says we're gonna have fun today, but notice dot, 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 dot means that the label could not, the text of the label is bigger than the size of the label, so it could not fit it all in here. Also, the button color now is green, all right? So that's how we did the outlet. The outlet is to change the properties, change the text values, and so forth. What about an action? What can we do with an action? So I'm gonna go back to our code, and I'll show you how we do actions. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're gonna do something with that button. So if we go back to the main storyboard, here is my button. Remember to show the code assist. You click on this, and then you click on the assistant. This is the button. This is the class associated with this screen. And now I'm going to do right click and gonna do insert. Instead of, I notice I'm doing my actions below outlets. I do as usual. It's up to you how you guys do it, but I usually put my outlet above, my actions below. So the actions that I want is that this thing here is going to say, I'm gonna, anywhere, if I touch anywhere in that button, I want to do something. And then the actions that you can do are many. You're not going to learn all of them now, but the one that we're going to do is right now is just touch up inside. And I'm going to say button pressed. All right. Now this is the argument. We will revisit this argument later on in unit 2. We'll visit these arguments, but for now, all I'm doing is that I'm creating an action. When I press on that button, something is going to happen. So when I click on this, this is my action. So now if I go back, notice here it's gray. Gray means that it's not saved yet. So to save it, you hit Command S to save this, and then you're fine. Now, if I close this and go back to the view controller, and then let's do something with that button. So in the book, it says just print button is pressed, right? My button is pressed. Okay, in the book. So let's test it and see what happens. And then we will do something cooler little later, okay? So if I click on, if I run it, and if I click on this, and then I show the storyboard again, show you the program again, and here it says button pressed. All right. If you don't believe me, you can always put a debug point here. And then if you show the simulator, when you click on the button, it will take you to that breakpoint that you put inside that function. Now, if you're satisfied, you can delete that and then run it. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to cover, some of the properties that you cannot change. There are a lot of properties. Let me bring that the book again here, and I'll show you the common properties. I can't do that. I have to stop sharing and share it again. Hold on. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, so some of the common properties that you'll see over and over again are the text fields, the text value. So this is if it's a label, if it's a text, or if a text view, you can change these text values. The color of the text color, dynamic types, the font, the alignments, the number of lines. This is helpful with the labels. You can change the number of lines. So remember that dot, dot, dot. So to fix that problem, you can adjust the number of lines or just the width of it, enabled or not enabled. So there's a lot of properties, obviously, for every object that you select. But the common ones are, over time, you learn which ones do you use a lot. There are some that are special and unique, and then you'll figure those out on your own as you become more, you gain more expertise with the tool. All right. So the last part that I'm going to show you, some of these properties you cannot change in the properties. You can change them inside inside the code. For example, for a scroll view, you cannot change the width and the height of it, which we'll talk about later on. And the labels, for example, you can change those inside the program. But let me show you another example for the button. All right. So for the button, if we go back to our code, if I want to change the corners radius for the, I wanted to have rounded corners for the button when I click on it. So I can say my button dot layer dot radius, corner radius, and then I can give it some value equal 15.0. All right. So what this is, you're changing a property for the button that you cannot do it inside the user interface properties. So now when I press on this, it's going to give me a rounded corner for that button. So just like you would do it in the interface, you can change a lot of these properties as well as in your code. So if I click on this, you'll notice that it'll have rounded button. It's a long lesson. I know this tool is great. There's a lot to learn in it. You're not going to be expert in one session. This is just the first building block that you're going to build on it and on it and on it until you become very familiar with this tool. And throughout these series of videos, hopefully you will gain more experience as you go on. The next thing you need to do is you need to do the guided project. This is the guided project where you add a button and you follow the steps here, and then you give you more exercises with the user interface and the programming. Have a good day, and I will see you in the next video.